Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. In this video, I will provide a definition for grammar according to a more modern point of view. But before I go further explaining or defining grammar according to this modern point of view, a quick reminder of what we talked about in our last meeting. In our last meeting, we talked about, we provided a definition for grammar according to the traditional point of view. And in short, according to the traditional point of view, grammar is seen as syntax. That is only as a set of rules that allow us to combine words. And mostly those rules were prescriptive. And since prescriptive rules or prescriptive grammar are traditional, meaning they violate or they are opposed to the actual use of language. So mainly, the basic mistake of a prescriptive grammar is that a prescriptive grammar sees a grammar as a set of normative rules, meaning they deal with the rules as an assumed norm regarded as a correct or a standard. In truth, what is correct and what is incorrect is ultimately only a matter of what is accepted by society, for language is a matter of conventions within society. And it is perfectly okay for a teacher to teach students what is considered acceptable standard English by society and what is considered unacceptable non-standard English. Also, what is to be avoided when it comes to teaching grammar? What is to be avoided is the mindless repetition of rules of a grammar. This is crucial for you as a future teachers to know and to keep in mind. You should avoid mindless repetition of rules of a grammar that have no basis in actual usage. Okay, so keep that in mind. And also, when it comes to rules, especially prescriptive rules, there are certain drawbacks. First of all, prescriptive rules have exceptions, meaning they are not airtight formulations. They always have exceptions. A rule serve a certain purposes, especially for beginning language learner as rules of thumb. Okay, so rule, if we were to think of rules, then they just serve certain purposes, or they could be considered only as rules of thumb. Okay, also rules have fuzzy not rules actually rules cannot sufficiently deal with the fuzzy boundaries of linguistic categories, meaning when it comes to prescriptive rules and when it comes to grammar in general. Now grammar includes more than one layer, starting with phonology, then morphology, then syntax, that is structure, and then there is the layer of meaning. Now these are linguistic categories. They overlap, and prescriptive rules do not sufficiently deal with these boundaries. Okay, also rules are mostly about providing generalizations. Okay, and However, there is these fuzzy boundaries, which contradicts the purpose of rules. Also, prescriptive rules lack contextual sufficiency, meaning prescriptive rules do not do not take into consideration the context. Okay, and that is a very negative aspect of prescriptive rules. Also, keep in mind, language is immutable and organic. Therefore, the categories of language and rules are often non-discrete. That is also needs to be considered. And finally, not even prescriptive rules have drawbacks. Also, descriptive rules do not tell us about which construction to use in a particular context. And again, this has to do with lacking contextual sufficiency. Some of the descriptive rules do not provide contextual, do not consider contextual context in general. That is, the conventional nature of language is critical, and it is overlooked by rules, whether descriptive or prescriptive. Accordingly, and because of these drawbacks of rules, as seen as created by traditional grammar, a more modern view of a grammar needs to be introduced. Therefore, we can consider a more practical definition for a grammar. A grammar could be defined as a meaning-making resource. It is made up of lexicogrammatical form, meaning, and use constructions that are appropriate to the context, and that operates at the word, phrase, and sentence and textual level. So, for us in this course, we will adopt this view, the view that sees grammar as a meaning-making resource. Okay, and there is more than one layer. The first layer has to do with the lexicogrammatical form, and the second layer has to do with meaning, and the third layer has to do with use construction. And of course, all of these forms or all of these layers have to be considered within a certain context. Okay, and again, the context operating at the word level, okay, then a phrase, then a sentence, then a textual level. So keep this in mind, and in a moment we will explain every individual concept in this definition. So let's start with lexicogrammar. Now pay attention to these examples. Making a picture and taking a picture. Now both of them are grammatically correct. However, if we were to speak a more natural way, then we would say taking a picture. Now, and we would deem the second one as grammatical. And of course, this has nothing to do with structure. It only has to do with the lexical items that are used in these phrases. Okay, and therefore, grammar is interconnected with lexicon, that is vocabulary, not just structure and not just the syntax. So we cannot really exclude the lexicon. We cannot exclude vocabulary from a grammar. Therefore, we need to take that into consideration. These two examples illustrate that language is less governed by rules and more made up of patterns. These patterns of language are often referred to as constructions. Okay, constructions. So again, it's not only about rules, but all actually it's far away from rules, but mostly language and a grammar are more about patterns. And again, back to these examples, taking a picture is a more acceptable, more frequent pattern, and therefore we would say it is the grammatical pattern, or it is the grammatical form. Now, also in this modern view of a grammar, we need to pay attention to constructions. Um, Now, what do we mean by constructions? Pay attention to these two examples. Let's start with the first one. Walk plus ed, pass, then it is walked. Now, this the construction of this word walked expresses a different meaning from walk. And also, before we go to the second example, adding ed to a verb as the verb walk contribute to the meaning. Okay. And again, look at the example, the second example, the child versus a child, the plus noun versus a plus noun. Each of these constructions has a different meaning, right? We know that the child is different from a child. In the case of the child, then the meaning is different because we're talking about a child that is known for both the speaker and the hearer. However, a child is just different, and we could talk about a child mentioned for the first time, a child who is not identified for both the speaker and the hearer. Okay. At the level of the sentence, there are also four meaning patterns. Okay, so you need to keep that in mind. Now, it is basic for you to know the purpose for studying and teaching grammar. Well, there is more than one reason to teach and study grammar. The first one is to understand human nature. We all know that language is a human phenomenon, and studying language is part of natural sciences, and therefore if we were to study language and if we were to understand language, this gives us a chance to understand the human nature. Therefore, studying grammar could contribute to that. Also, we study grammar to realize grounds of linguistic prejudices. Now, some of us could assign certain attitudes to what we hear, or to certain varieties that is in a second language or even in our native language, and for no reason. But studying grammar could provide a grounds of linguistic prejudices. We can understand why would people prefer one variety over another one. Also, studying grammar could help us moderate linguistic prejudices, not only realizing them and understanding them, but also could help us moderate these linguistic prejudices. Also, studying grammar could help in assessing linguistic issues of public concern. Okay, what to teach, what variety to teach, what to focus on when it comes to dealing with language on a more a national level. And finally, studying grammar could help us use the language more effectively. And actually, this is a foundational reason. This is a very basic reason for us, especially we study English as a second language, and you will be future teachers of English. Um, Also, there are pedagogical considerations for studying grammar. Okay, for studying pedagogical considerations. When we study grammar, when we understand grammar, we would be able to use punctuation accurately and teach punctuation to our students accurately. Also, a recognition of grammatical structures is often essential for punctuation, and a study of one's native grammar is helpful when one studies the grammar of a foreign language. Um, and also, a knowledge of a grammar is a help in the interpretation of literary as well as non literary text. Since the interpretation of a passage sometimes depends crucially on a grammatical analysis. So, this is also to be considered. And finally, a study of a grammatical resources of English is useful in composition. In particular, it can help you as both students and teachers to evaluate the choices available to you when you come to revise an earlier written draft. So that's it for this video. Thank you for listening, and talk to you later. Bye bye.